Welcome to hear about the highlights in the cluster and what we as a cluster do to contribute to a sustainable seafood growth.
Giving me the chance to look a little bit back. I have called my presentation today Membership Focus, and I'm sorry to say that it's a mix of some Norwegian and some English slides, but I hope I can make my message across. And it's also a little bit longer than I tend to spend, so some of the slides I will jump quite fast through. But the schedule I have for there. I want to talk a little bit about the history of innovation in the salmon industry. I will, of course, talk about the establishment of the cluster from start, from a kind of collective approach to a value focus, from a broad scope to a focus scope, from a triple helix model to a pentagon model, and especially arising the most important for us, the membership focus, and then show you the model we have we have established to secure those targets. So looking a little bit back to innovation, it's a fantastic industry we have been a part of, and there are many jubilees coming up these days. It's amazing also how important innovation has been in this industry. And if you start by the pioneers, in the 70s, 80s, we were below 100,000 tons. Today we are at 2.5 million tons. There were pioneers starting something brand new. It was farmers, it was fishermen, some biologists, and some nutrition people, and some teachers. But there were no industrial players except for maybe on the supplier side. And a few corporates saw these opportunities. What the pioneers saw was an urgent need of innovation, and it was more like crisis innovation. They faced all the pains that you can think of. Early maturation, diseases, explosions of new events, parasites, cold water, and also combined with market distress, turbulence, etc. So innovation was, in a way, something that they had to start with immediately. And I think it's very important to establish here that from that start, with individuals, it was a collective approach. It was to work with innovation collectively. That has been, in a way, in our genes, and has to some extent still been that we are doing innovation in the seafood, especially on the farming side, as building an industry, and not so much to differentiate companies. We built cooperatives, we built in genetics, in sales, in research. And that was the farmers' approach, and that's also some of the heritage we are having in the cluster. It's a little bit different story in the supply industry, because suppliers were competing all the time on feed, vaccines, new products, more classical competition, motivation for doing innovation. New feeds every year, new feeding machines, new vaccines, new components. That was a different story, and that's also a little bit of what we see today in the cluster, that there is somewhat a farmer approach and there's somewhat a supplier approach. But I think what the cluster is able to do is to link the value chain together. And we should be aware, we have a fantastic model in Norway. And when I'm out speaking, they talk about the Norwegian model. We have strong political support to the industry. We have public investment in R&D. And we're currently in the midst of a change in innovation approach, where we try to adapt to the consolidated farming company structure, where we are building clusters like ourselves, where we have industry R&D fund, we have government investing in CRO and research facilities, and we have this wake-up awareness of startups, and we are also cautiously mobilizing risk capital. And in this cluster, it's in this map here, where we have entrepreneurs, universities, government, and corporates, and capital, we have the new Pentagon model, where the cluster is about to find its way of working. We have to say always, we are a membership organization and we need to listen to the members. That is the mantra that I we are always talking about in the administration, in the membership meetings, and that's how we try to build the cluster. And each cluster have different membership focus, and we try to build the synergies and also extract the areas where we can cover most of the members' interests. In order to do that, we have, since we started in 2013, had a very clear focus on scope, and we have had two rather large strategy processes in 15 and 18, deciding where to focus. And we have the three pillars that will be repeated many times. It's about knowledge, it's about innovation, and it's about entrepreneurship. And those are still the strong guiding stars for how we are working, and that's how we will present ourselves during this conference. The asset we have is the members, and we are very proud of having this chart with so many members in different categories, and we want to satisfy all and listen to them, and that's why we also have a broad scope, which we think at least pieces will adapt every member, and we're also happy that we have a flow in of members, which is a kind of reward that we are doing something right. But I think it's also important to be very focused. Honeymoon was when we started. Value for money is what we are working now. We need to find the projects where we can really defend ourselves, the membership fee, the resources that your teams are using in our resource groups and others. So what's in it for me? It's not enough to have good events like this one. It's the results of what we are able to deliver in our new education programs, in our networking digital tools that we are developing, the innovation projects. We need to be member-oriented. We need to have an approach that covers the industry, so our topics that should have somewhat a broad interest. And we also need to look forward. And we also need to select some topics that are maybe too competitive to be for a cluster. And this is clearly based on feedback from our members. We need to engage the members, because most of the resources is in the members, and we need to have them engaged. And thus we need to have our engagement close to the core focus of our members. We think have identified fish health and digitalization as very core and very broad areas that covers a lot of the members, and clearly those are two topics that we feel enthusiasm around and have a lot of activity around. But we also would like to share the success histories like we will do today. We need to be bold enough to say that we have actually built fantastic programs in competence. We have a strong innovation projects that is running, and we have also a new activities within startup and entrepreneurship that is really impressive. And we also see that the membership engagement is proven through what we call the resource groups, and I will just underline how important those are. Those are your people that come in resource groups for entrepreneurship, for innovation, and for competence building. And that's where the decisions of the content of the cluster is built. And talking about clusters, so what is clusters? What have we learned? Well, we have definitely learned that there is not a one cluster model that fits all. I think every cluster needs to build their own identity. How local, how thematic, how segmented they want to be. You need to look out. And it's not necessary to compete between clusters, because it's enough to do for each cluster to find its identity. I think also we should be careful of building too complex structures. Be light, be understanded, and what we try to do is rather to recruit some extra resources rather than build a big organization ourselves. And we also try to work with other clusters when that works. So is the future super clusters? Well, I know Torger Reve probably will raise this when he comes after me. But I'm a little bit careful. Don't make it too distant. Do the businesses see that big world, or would they rather have things that are happening closer to them? And don't build too much administration. Go to the actions, go to the deliverables. I think it's important to focus on partnership in one-to-one collaborations rather than building too big constellations. So, summing up, be aware of your industry nature, tradition and need. Adapt the cluster's focus to the needs of the industry. Be out and listen to the customers and meet and create good meeting points. Be aware of what's best to resolve across, and what's more, it's better to be resolved by the company itself. Focus on delivery and ensure engagement from the membership. Timing, be a little bit ahead of the companies and demonstrate new opportunities with benefits. That would be my advices and what we have learned so far after 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Einar. Nice to hear you look back. Now the next one's up is Torger Reve. He's kind of the father of clusters, as you all know. He's also a professor and former principal of BI. And also he's been a part of the cluster, as a member of the board of the cluster in many years. And he will talk to us about building a successful cluster. We look forward to hear you speak direct from Kragerø, Torger. Welcome to stage.
Okay, small correction first. These local differences are important. It's a wonderful day out here. So I hope the sun is treating you well. I will talk with no slides. Einar has summarized much of what I'm going to say. So maybe we can have a discussion later. Let me start with this idea of cluster. It's not a novel concept. It has long historical roots. Actually, it goes back to, I would say, the Roman Empire or before. The marketplaces around the Mediterranean, in Asia and so on, all had cluster-like features. A good example actually is Bergen. Bergen Hanseatic cluster in seafood, exported dried seafood from northern Norway to Europe, and they did that many hundred years ago. So Bergen has always been a cluster city, but they didn't have any seafood innovation cluster as they have today. So the new thing is starting cultivating clusters and making clusters an engine in industrial economic development. That's a more recent phenomenon. I think it started with a very influential book came out of Harvard by Professor Michael Porter. It was called The Competitive Advantage of Nations, and it was published in 1990. It's a brick of a book where it actually discusses clusters in many different countries. Norway was not part of that. So some business people called me and said, can't you make a study like that on Norway? I said, no, I don't believe in this. I'm doing other stuff. But they came back to me, they insisted, and we ended up, together with colleagues at NHH, I was a professor at Norwegian School of Economics at the time, we published a large empirical study of Norwegian industry. It's called Et konkurransedyktig Norge, Competitive Norway, came out in 1992. So this was the start. And in this book, we pioneered the concept maritime cluster, which is now part of the common vocabulary of Norwegian politicians and business leaders. The 1992 study was followed by another study similar set up by that I wrote with Erik Jacobsen, who is now in charge of Menon Economics. It's called The Value Creating Norway, and came out 2002. And 10 years later, I did the third large study with my colleague Amir Sasson at BI, a knowledge-based Norway. Now, time is soon due for the fourth study, which I guess will be called A Sustainable Norway, but I will leave that to my colleagues at BI, Norwegian Business School. So what do these studies of Norwegian industries show? Well, it shows that Norway basically has only 3 global clusters. The first one, and the strongest in terms of value creation, is offshore energy. Second is maritime. That's where the term maritime cluster comes from. And the third is seafood. I went back and looked, and actually seafood has been moving up from the first study to the second study to the third study. So seafood is in growth. And if we look at offshore oil and gas, it's fair to say it's a declining industry. although it will remain Norway's most important industry for many years to come. Maritime industry, which is also a very basic and old industry for Norway, going back to the Viking ages, it has great fluctuations. It's quite volatile. Some sectors like supply ships and drilling rigs are in overcapacity and bankruptcy. I mean, if we take my boat from Riso, we will see many supply ships being idle here. But there are also new sectors like battery ships and green stuff that's an emerging growth. So it's a very fluctuating industry, probably in terms of Norwegian, if you look at shipyards, probably overcapacity. The seafood industry, which you represent, I would say is at all-time high, especially Norwegian salmon, and enjoys a combination of high prices, high demand, as well as benefiting from a weak Norwegian kroner. So the aquaculture industry is so profitable right now that a new natural resource tax has been proposed to make sure there is not so much capital accumulated on the west coast and in northern Norway as it is right now. So Oslo doesn't want to be challenged on being the most valuable economic region in Norway. This battle goes on forever, but I think you are about to win it. Now, clusters are bottom-up phenomena, not industrial centers created by government and innovation Norway. Austevoll, where Nina Stangeland grew up, is my favorite example. Austevoll people were coastal fishermen and not very wealthy, but they were entrepreneurial, as Einar talked about. So when fisheries were poor, they built larger fishing vessels and started deep-sea fishing. And when offshore oil and gas emerged, supply ships looked like fishing vessels. So they started to invest in supply ships, doing much of the same as they've done in fisheries. But basically, they were fishermen and not oilmen. So when they saw the new opportunities in aquaculture, they immediately turned into aquaculture. So now we expect them to go into offshore aquaculture, going further out from the coast as they did in fisheries, to also invest in larger industrial scale, as we see now from companies further north like SalMar and Nordlaks. Nordlaks actually got the new big facilities about last week, I think, coming in. I have a similar experience in my own upbringing because my dialect is like Einar's from Jørn, where I grew up among farmers. There were only one topic at meals and dinner tables at Jørn: farming and the newest in farming machinery and technology. We were very competitive and very innovative, just like strong clusters should work. So both my own background and Nina's background, we have it from growing up, and now we have to take it into practice at a larger scale. What about the Norwegian Cluster Innovation Program? Now that started in 2002, the same year as my book Value Creating Norway came out, where we proposed such a program. Our current Prime Minister, Erna Solberg from Bergen, was then the Minister of Regional Affairs, and she found funding for the program. So Erna Solberg is seen as the mother of the Cluster Innovation Program. And as Nina mentioned, some people say I am considered the father of the Cluster Innovation Program. So it's based from Bergen and has been developing from there. Now the Cluster Innovation Program that you are part of is a modern knowledge-based approach to industrial development, rather than the old approach where you did sort of interventions and subsidies. This was stimulating knowledge rather than going into investment and so on. The goal is to stimulate technological and commercial knowledge and competence development in building stronger knowledge and competent links between industrial actors. The approach is very practical in nature. How can we better learn from each other? How can we better copy best practice? How can we steal an idea from our neighbor? So ideally, a cluster initiative should include actors from the whole value chain: suppliers, producers, and knowledge providers. Activities, as you know, typically include training programs, joint R&D, technology programs, R&D, HR programs, and also building reputation, and I would say location branding. So there's a locational element in it. Where do they all reside? And of course, you have this fantastic location at Marineholmen, which I always talk about as a very strong cluster location. So Bergen has really a very good site for this. The cluster should include both large organizations and small and medium-sized enterprises. And key actors such as RD&I, which is research, development, and innovation firms, which is called in EU terminology, and many specialized knowledge providers. So rather than building clusters around the largest industrial leaders, such as Equinor or Mowi, it's important to tap into the whole diversity of the industry, especially on the R&D side and supply side. More recently, as we heard Einar talk about, most clusters now also include financial actors and investors. That's because we talk so much more now about innovation and entrepreneurship. At first, the economist community, including many of my colleagues at NHH, didn't like clusters. They didn't think highly about it, and they think it was a way to protect all industries, and it was like a modern lobby network. So, but then a few years later, Professor Paul Krugman received the Nobel Prize in Economics on his research into knowledge externalities and knowledge-based growth, which is basically the same as clusters. So then their attitude changed. Now, Michael Porter at Harvard, who had coined the concept of clusters, but did not receive the Nobel Prize, he didn't like this. So he started to hate Paul Krugman and said, he stole my ideas. So you see, there's a story that illustrates the important role of rivalry in the clusters. Sometimes even they hate each other. Whether or not it's the academic community, as my example, or it is the rivalry between Bergen and Stavanger, or between Austevoll and Herøy, which is an old fight among the big fishermen. What I find stimulating is, and I think Einar mentioned that clearly in his introduction, is to combine the insights I have received from Harvard with the insights I received from MIT, two of the most influential universities in the world, located only a couple of miles from each other in Boston or Cambridge. There are three major drivers in industrial development according to the MIT model. Cluster capacity, which is a term we have discussed from the approach here, innovation capacity, and entrepreneurship capacity. When you look at Norway, Norway has very high cluster capacity in the ocean industries, the three industries I already mentioned, and seafood actually is at the core of that. Norway has also high innovation capacity with lots of good programs, Innovation Norway programs, R&D labs, many good things, and right now during Corona, it's easy to get more money for those kind of things. But what it lacks is the entrepreneurial capacity, or the commercial gene that I argue exists at such places as Austevoll and Jørn. This shows us that clusters, to be successful, have to put much more emphasis on entrepreneurship and commercialization rather than the initial focus on knowledge development and R&D. So we've gone from the triple helix model, with interaction between industry, academia, and government, which in a way is difficult enough, to a five-stakeholder innovation ecosystem, where we also include entrepreneurs and capital. I now refer to that as the Pentagon model. I don't really like the term Pentagon so much because it makes me think about the US defense, which is perhaps not the most entrepreneurial in the world. When Bill Lett, who is our favorite professor at MIT, lectures about entrepreneurship, they have a slogan, they even have a button they put on the jacket saying that it's better to be a pirate than to join the Navy. Now, coming to Norway and to Stavanger, it was hard to use that because they didn't understand this thing about the Navy. So they coined a Norwegian version of that. And the Norwegian version of that is, it's better to be a Viking than to work in Statoil. So, research that I have conducted as part of the MIT REAP project, which looked about the industries on the West Coast, showed that 2 out of 3 new jobs in the private sector is created by young firms. And most important drivers, they are the most important drivers in value creation and job creation, are the scale-ups, the very few young firms that are able to grow fast. One example of such a scale-up that I work with currently at Aker is Cognite. which may well become Europe's most influential industrial software firm in the future. Some of you may have read the story about Cognite Data Fusion and Jørn Markus Lavik in Dagens Næringsliv about a week ago. So this is an example. We need to get firms that grow fast and who has this knowledge base. It's not a resource base, it's a knowledge base. And it's clearly innovation, and it's a combination of entrepreneur and corporate. Now, how did the focus change? I think Einar mentioned that, and perhaps he said we shouldn't go too fast on that. So the first focus is local, say Bergen or Marineholmen or Ågotnes. Second, regional, West Coast, and then national, and then global. I think Norway is currently we know that Norway is currently taking a strategic position in as a global knowledge hub in the ocean industries. Bergen should take a strategic position as the global knowledge hub in seafood, or at least in Atlantic salmon. So you need to make strategic choices and then go from there. As a small country like Norway or West Coast Norway, we need to be very specific strategically, otherwise we won't have much influence. In the MIT REAP project, we formulate the vision for Norway and the West Coast of Norway, saying, develop high-value, sustainable ocean industries to energize and feed the world. If we can do part of that, we have an enormous job and almost endless markets. But to do this, we need to go from a resource economy, and many think of Norway as a resource country, to a production economy, where we thought that manufacturing was the big thing, production, to a knowledge and innovation economy. So what should the Seafood Innovation Cluster in Bergen do to succeed even greater in the future? I don't have a recipe for that. We have some experience from seeing many of the clusters around the world, and especially the Norwegian one and also European Union clusters. But I think you need to have a broader focus than salmon production. Seafood is such an important industry, and you have this fantastic lead in the way you the aquaculture salmon. So that should be used a little broader. Not very much broader, but a little broader. So you expand your scope. I would also have a deeper focus on technology and biology. Interesting enough here, this is not an engineering industry totally, it is a biology industry. And life science is perhaps more important right now as an industrial transformation force than engineering. Engineering and geology we did for offshore oil and gas, and I think biology is the new thing. So while we have strong position for that, I think you have a fantastic start. The third is, I would say, have a stronger focus on sustainability and health. I think you already have that in your goals. The question is how deeply rooted is it, or is it simply lip service to it, or is it deeper? And I would also add a fourth one, and it's already mentioned very clearly by Einar, have a stronger, clearer focus on innovation and commercialization. I will open up for new members even more from other parts of Norway, as we have seen going from a local to a national. We have seen the same for Oslo Health Tech Cluster, which is now called Norway Health Tech Cluster. I would also open up for new members from related industries and working more closely with NCE Ocean Tech Cluster, which you already co-located with. You have wonderful co-location there because you can learn from each other. And I would say, I would suggest less reliance on the large firms like Movi and Grieg, and more reliance on suppliers and knowledge providers, stretching the value chain from R&D to international consumer market. I think you have done a good job on R&D side. I think you should add perhaps more on the commercial side, going into the consumer market, which is actually what drives the demand for this. I would also involve cluster members more actively, and that's a challenge, especially the SMEs and the R&D guys. How can we make them find this valuable, not simply a member organization that you sort of reluctantly have to be member of, but also where you see the direct benefits. Then I would embrace the new drivers of industrial development, and I think there are two drivers that I would point to at the end. One is digitalization and artificial intelligence, AI. Here I think AquaCloud is an excellent initiative. I would see collaboration with many of the larger initiatives in this field now. Most recently, we have at Aker and Fornebu established C4IR, which means Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution, under leadership of Björgolfur Hávardsson, who came from DNVGL. This is a World Economic Forum initiative, and how can you transform industries using the new tools? I would say there's also a life science tool, but this is how you use digitalization and AI as the major drivers for industrial development. So this could take you into a new phase. It's already being applied. And the second is sustainability. An example of another initiative that I work with is RevOcean, under the leadership of Nina Jensen. This is the largest ocean research vessel in the world. Is right now being a little delayed because of Corona, but it has a very strong commitment to cleaning up the ocean. The vision in both these initiatives is the following: one, healthy and productive ocean. Or as Vidar Helgesen, the former envoy to UN High-Level Ocean Panel, used to say, ocean wealth requires ocean health. Now this is a language of sustainability that also Bergen and Austral seafood people will understand. By the way, Vidar Helgesen now became the new director of Nobel Institute in Stockholm, so he is now leaving ocean and going into Nobel Prizes. But Nobel Prizes are important, as you heard earlier. I would also mention the importance of attracting, and this was already mentioned earlier, I would underline it more, the importance of attracting investment community, especially angel capital, venture capital and growth capital. I wouldn't be so much concerned about private equity, because what we need are someone who want to build scale-ups, not sell them at a quick profit. I would also mention the importance of visible and strong cluster leadership. That has been distinguishing the well-functioning clusters from the less well-functioning clusters. So work strongly on that. Doesn't mean bureaucratization of many people, but very important leaders in this, both at board and at the director level. I would perhaps suggest building closer networks to other ocean clusters, both nationally and internationally. I know you're already doing that, but there's more to do, more to be done on that. And perhaps you also need some showcase innovations that can be communicated easily to the larger public. And some of you who listened to the innovation speech in the Innovation Norway last week, you heard Morten Fon at Jørn give a very, very smart little example of innovation. They had developed at Jørn an anti-folding robot for commercial ships, and it cleaned the surface of the ship, and it would reduce the fuel consumption and really add or really lower the CO footprint of ships. This is simple stuff. You need simple stuff that people can understand, that you can go on television on. It's very difficult to explain these very complex stuff, but simple demonstration examples. Finally, I would give you a strong warning, making sure that there's no anti-competitive behavior in the cluster. Anti-competitive behavior could easily destroy it all. Remember, your industry has very few friends and many enemies, especially when you view it from Oslo, where I now reside.
Innovation Norway contributes to sustainable growth and exports for Norwegian businesses through capital and expertise. Our mandate and purpose are unchanged, but as a result of increased funding, we now have the opportunity to reach more businesses and to increase the degree of our support. For the development of new solutions, we provide grants and loans. Now, note that now my slide was supposed to be there and show the additional funding we have. And this is in addition to the funds we already provide for startup, innovation and loans. We still have defined criteria on which projects we can support. Thank you. Please go to the next slide. perfect, then you can just add all three numbers to this slide. Yeah, as I said, we still have defined criteria on which projects we can support, and we prioritize projects that have a high degree of innovation and growth potential. For startups, we have, as you can see, 500 million NOK additionally, and we provide loans and grants. Earlier, you could only get one of the services as a startup. You can have loan or a grant, but now you can actually receive a combination of these two. And we have also increased the degree of support you can obtain. Innovation loans, we have 1.6 billion Norwegian kroners in addition to the ones we already had, and we have actually doubled the amount of loan each company can have. The Extraordinary Innovation Grant is a new service that is aimed at Norwegian companies of all sizes that build their growth strategy on innovation. Grants for innovation projects should contribute to strengthening the company's competitiveness and trigger a potential for sustainable growth. An innovation project aims to develop a new or substantially improve a product, service, or a process. Next slide, please. We recently launched the campaign Green Transition. Norwegian companies now have increased opportunity for support through various phases of their projects. While we normally expect the companies to finance the pre-phases themselves, but now we can actually support the good projects during all phases from the pre-phase and all the way through to commercialization or implementing the new process. And there is also quite substantially increased opportunity for also large businesses, large companies to apply for support. In this campaign, Green Transition, we have defined some themes. And if you go to our website, innovationnorway.no, you will be guided to the theme that is applies for your business. And we have themes such as circular economy, green mobility, renewable energy, and energy systems. We also have grants for development, piloting, and demonstration of future ocean-based solutions. For fisheries and aquaculture projects, both fish welfare and environmental impact will be given great importance. In summary, I hope that the message of increased opportunities, even for large companies, is clear, and I encourage you to contact us either through the seafood cluster or directly to discuss exciting projects. We already are experiencing increased demand, but we believe that there are many more great innovation projects in this region, and we would really like to help realize them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Vivian. Now I'm starting with the right sign saying time's up. I hope I get some time to introduce the highlights that I wanted to present for you. This session would be an introduction to what we are doing in the cluster and some highlights of what we have been doing in regarding to activities and projects and services in the cluster. We started in the fall to think, as you said, Torger, to be more and more direct and concrete about what we are doing. We know that we have the foundation and the aim and the vision of what we are doing, that we aim to contribute to a sustainable seafood growth by focusing on innovation. We use the fall to be more concrete and to specify what are we actually offering our members and partners as a cluster. In 2019, we summed up the year by saying that we had 69 partners and members in total. We introduced a lot of new partners last year and also members. And we also contributing to project funding of 63 million NOK. That include also one of the EU projects that we are participating in. We had 18 projects running in 2019 in our strategic areas. We are both project leader and also project coordinator, facilitators in different projects. So a lot of these different projects, they are all with the aim to contribute to innovation, entrepreneurship, and knowledge in the industry. Last year, we established a new strategic area, entrepreneurship, with the activities and services around these areas for our members and partners. We also last year got 4 new shareholders, University of Bergen, DNB, Pathogen, and Salmon Breed into the clusters. So some of the highlights from this year is when we had the members meeting last week, we had 12 new members and partners in 2020. They are listed here. Yesterday we actually got one more, and we see a lot of new companies joining the cluster and pay interest to what we are doing, and we're very happy to introduce them, and we know exactly what kind of membership structure we would like to have in the cluster. We know that we will have a overweight of industry members, and we know that a lot of these new members are also startup companies, and we are happy also to introduce Garvara as an Indian company. We are happy to introduce Farvan as the first risk capital provider in the cluster, and also all of the rest here, like Inca Fish and Seaborn, that is also the member that will join this week. We are very happy to have them interact in the cluster and look forward to include them. In 2020, we also have new projects and services under development. We have started 3 new projects within the services in the competence area. We have several new projects in the innovation area under development with all the same focus that we would like to contribute to digitalization and digital transformation and improving fish health and fish welfare, and look into the space of new marine species. We also have improved and will develop new projects and services for the entrepreneurs in our cluster. So, when we try to tell you about what we are actually doing, we are trying now to be more concrete about what projects that we are involved with, what services we provide, and what meeting arenas that is facilitated by the clusters. I will shortly give you an introduction here before we get into all the different strategic areas after. Here we have listed some of the biggest projects that we are involved in. We have AquaCloud that we are going to give you a status of after me. We have EU projects, and we have infrastructure establishment under OINC, it says here, but it's Ocean Innovation Catapult Center. We have different projects within competence that all aims to increase the sustainable development of the seafood industries. All of this and more projects is where our partners can interact and can contribute to specific areas that is of interest for the specific companies. As services, we are trying to say what are the actual facts that you can take part in. This year, we are launching our new competence project, that is Seafood Next, that is starting up in the fall, and we are happy also to introduce workshops 2020, where we will attract new areas of innovation and facilitate workshops where we try to develop projects and mature projects and put good collaboration arenas for the different companies in the cluster. We have also developed a new digital ecosystem that is called the SeaPoint. We will introduce you more to that in the areas of entrepreneurship. And we hope that these services will give you and provide you with good value for each one of you. As for meeting arenas, as you all know, there's different arenas for the members and partners in the cluster. We have tried to mention some of them here. This is the more consistent work of meeting arenas. And as Einar earlier said in the meeting, we are very happy to interact in the way we do with our research group meetings. And all of the people that is on this meeting now are participating in the groups here. And we also open up for new members to join our research groups if you have interest in doing that. Yes, now I just want to shortly remind ourselves what kind of business area we work within. We have the knowledge that we started with in the cluster. We have innovation, that is the area that we attracted next. And we have entrepreneurship that we recently established in 2019 and is now evolving in what kind of services and projects that we are doing there. Before we go on to the business area, I would like to introduce Jørn Torsvik. He's recently started as a new project leader of AquaCloud, and he will give you an introduction and status of how the project is evolving. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. And I'm really happy to be part of AquaCloud and to be here to give you an update on the project progress. But let me first just say a few words about myself, because one of the big changes in the project recently is the change of project manager. As you may know, Einar Wathne, the chairman of the Seafood Innovation Board, was previously also the project manager for AquaCloud. But at this point, we want to put even more effort into setting the direction and make sure that we deliver on the ambitions of the project. So I was asked to step in, and I'm really happy to do so. I recently left Scale, where I had a position of Chief Digital Officer, so I know the business, I know the digital challenges and some of the initiatives that goes on in the industry, which gives me a very good perspective on what's happening also in this project. Another interesting thing to mention is that before I joined Scale, I was working as the CIO of a medium-sized savings bank here in Norway, and I was also part of the board of directors at the BITS, which is the infrastructure company of the Norwegian banks, which provides standards, which provides infrastructure for payment transactions, etc., and which is owned by the banks and financial institutions together. Which really fits into the context where we want to put AquaCloud going forward. So currently in the project, as you know, we started back in 2016, focusing on the database to collect data, to work with a specific use case on predicting lives. And the database is still an important work stream in the project. Last year, we launched 3 new streams, which is really important because the learnings from the first one was that the quality of the data is insufficient to really generate the value we want. So we are now looking on standardization within 3 specific areas, is within sensors, within environmental data, and also in fish health data. And I will get back to you and comment on each of those. So this is currently the structure of the project. I try to make oversight and strategic direction for the whole project, while we have project managers handling each of the specific areas and doing very well, so I must say. Okay, so let's look at what's going on in the database area. We have been collecting data from quite a number of sites for a long time, and we're really looking forward to make the data available to the farmers and to the entrepreneurial and innovators out there. So we need to establish the governance principles of how to do that. What data can we share, considering competitive legislation, no sensitive information, etc. With whom can we share it, and on what are the terms? We are launching contractual templates to secure the legal framework around this, and we are currently starting to work on some pilot use cases to really verify that the principles and framework we put in place works in actual situations where we share the data. And finally, we are doing a really important job in this area to support the fish health standardization efforts to handle mortality registrations in a standardized way across different companies, which is a really, really high priority from fish health professionals in this industry. So in the sensor data standard, the second workflow, we really are trying to find out how can we get the data. Now, data has been closed off, it's been proprietary for many years, and we're looking on how to get that open, to specify specific sensor types, how the data is structured, and how you can access that data. And it's had a really, really tremendous people are coming to this project from all over the industry, different vendors, providers, farmers working together. I think 50, 60, 70 companies has been involved in this. And we are looking forward to release this standard in the third quarter. Then we will look into to work with partners to get this implemented and to get people on board. Of course, the providers are important to get this really to get traction and to get it out there. Then, of course, to look at expand it, and also maybe we will establish a test and certification platform, so it's easy for new companies to come up with their sensors and get to verify it works according to the standard. So, fish health data. It's quite a big standardization effort. We have broad support from the industry. I know fish health professionals and managers from all the big companies in the industry work together, setting the priorities for this. As I mentioned, mortality reporting is the main issue at this point. To get that into the AquaCloud database, and also doing a pre-study with the University of Life Sciences to establish a create coding system for mortality categories and down to the type level. We work with the standardization body of Norway to review the 9417 standard on terminology on a number of issues, on fish health data, also on our environmental data, which is the last work stream. It goes. It started last year, I think. It goes through this year into next year, and hopefully we will see a reviewed and re-standard by that point. And also in fish health, we do a lot of different initiatives, working with the Veterinary Institute, looking at fish health journals, and maybe one of the really interesting areas that we are currently diving into is traceability. How can you identify the populations from its offspring and into the final harvest, and maybe even to the consumer? Is extremely difficult today. There's different systems, there's different players handling the fish. So if we can do something in this area, it will create tremendous value in terms of learning and, of course, in terms of sustainable and traceable seafood. Okay, that was very briefly what we're doing in this moment. And what are we going to focus on going ahead? I think one of the interesting things with doing some changes in project management is that you also get some new perspective. So hopefully I can take some of the things I've seen from the vendor side, the system vendor side of things, and also to complement what we already have with the solid involvement from the farming companies and also other partners of the cluster in this project. So really, I found, looking ahead, I should start by looking back, because I found this slide, which was from the beginning of the project, and I think it's really good because it shows the ecosystem of different partners and players and stakeholders around this project, and they are all labeled value creators in this, even if they are data producers, or data consumers, or in any way providing this interchange. But I think maybe the main question is still to be answered, and that is, how is AquaCloud providing value to each of these different stakeholders? And that's something we're going to look into. So I've kind of identified, at this point at least, I've been in the project for more or less 4 weeks, so it's a little bit premature, but at this point I have established 5 focus areas. I think the first one is really important because this project has been running for several years, and we really need to deliver some tangible results. We need to make data available for innovators. We need to make some specific use cases to prove the value that we are creating in this project. So to make sure that the 4 work streams we have actually deliver results during this year is my number 1 priority. But then, speaking from my own experience, standing outside of the project, but also talking to different stakeholders, we really see that there is a need to establish a clarity of mission and the roadmap of the project. What is it? What is it going to be? If I'm a system provider outside of the project, is this a threat or is it an opportunity to participate? And we really need to take those stakeholder perspectives and put it into a very, very clear supported mission and strategy for the project going forward. And talking a lot about stakeholders, I think stakeholder involvement is critical. There's a few really engaged partners in the project that has been driving it with a lot of support, which is really, really good. But I think we need a broad commitment into this if we're really going to capture the great value potential that's out there. So to include the smaller farmers, which is already in the project, even more, to reach out to other clusters, to farmers, to vendors, to innovators, and bring those perspectives in and create a stronger relation to the project. And to get that involvement in this project also helps us on the next one, which is to promote unification of standardization efforts, because there's a lot of things happening out there. We have, we have this cluster where the Seafood Innovation, but we also have Aquatech in Trondheim. We have NCE Aquaculture in Bodø. We have the industry organizations. We have a lot of possible standardization bodies or drivers out there. And if everybody do their own thing and their own infrastructure and so forth, we are really undermining the potential of this data sharing ecosystem. So I think it's really important to work together and to make sure that we do this as unified as possible. And reaching out to those stakeholders is definitely on my agenda. And having reviewed all of this and set the direction, we will look into the project governance. Is this still going to be only a project in Seafood Innovation Cluster, or should it be governed differently with even more stakeholders in on the owner side of the project? Could be even a separate company. And of course, we will look at the content. Do we have the correct work streams? Do we have the right priorities? Do we have the right people, the structure, how we work? So basically, this is on my plate for the coming month, and hopefully it will create a foundation for the really exciting journey going forward.
Now we're going to go over to the next session. We actually been hosting movie stars this summer, and we are trying to make a film for each business area, just to give you a short introduction of why we have focused on these 3 areas from a wider perspective, together with some of our partners and members. So, and after that, we will get you more introduced to each area. Okay. I NCE Seafood så står vi jo overfor en utrolig spennende utvikling av en fremtidsrettet bransje. Vi vet at fremover mot 2050 så kan sjømat stå for 2/3 av behovet innenfor protein for verdens befolkning. Og det jo en utrolig viktig oppgave, der vi har et enormt behov for både å bidra til en bærekraftig utvikling og en vekst i verdiskapning fra sjømat.
Klingens målsetning å sikre partnerne og medlemmene tilgang til den riktige kompetansen. Det gjør vi ved å tiltrekke talenter, initiere og koordinere utdanningsprogrammer og tilby egne kompetanseprogrammer.
Kunnskapsdeling viktig for fremtiden. Vi må vite hva behov næringen har i dag, vi må vite hva behov næringen har i årene fremover, og da må man kommunisere gjennom et nettverk som klyngesamarbeidet
For oss, klyngen et partner. Det ikke en kunde, det ikke, så det betyr alt har med dialog å gjøre, informasjonsutveksling og bruk av våre kompetanser og forskjellige roller mot næringen. Det forskjellige tankegang mellom forskningsmiljø og næringen, og klyngen en viktig partner i dette for å lage en bro egentlig mellom de 2.
Sammen med våre partnere tilbyr vi kompetanseprogrammet Seafood Trainee. Seafood Trainee startet opp i 2016 og et nasjonalt trainee-program for nyutdannede som ønsker en karriere innenfor sjømatnæringen. Traineen blir ansatt 1 år i en bedrift, og så følger de et faglig program bestående av 4 samlinger av 3 dager. Siden starten i 2016 har 116 deltakere vært med, og 25 bedrifter.
Sjømatnæringen har jo et enormt potensial, og spesielt i takt med klimakrise og økende befolkning. Bærekraft må jo helt klart ligge til grunn for å finne løsninger på våre felles utfordringer som vi har. I bransjen så det jo mange aktører som veletablerte og som har holdt på lenge. Og jeg tror at hvis man velger å ta inn, eller tør å satse på nyutdannede folk, så får du friske hoder, nye blikk og rett og slett nytenkende mennesker. Og det vel ingen som sier nei til det i dag.
Lerøy jo så stor at vi kunne jo arrangert vårt eget trainee-program, men vi ser den styrken det at de unge kommer inn i næringen, får en god breddekompetanse om næringen fra dag 1 av. Det gjør til at de ser mulighetene og et lengre perspektiv på det å begynne i næringen.
Klyngen starter nå opp Seafood Next, som et internasjonalt kompetanseprogram for de som nyansatte i næringen, eller som trenger inspirasjon og faglig påfyll. Programmet vil være samlingsbasert og vil gi deltakerne en dyp innsikt i hele verdikjeden. Hi, I'm Benedicte and I'm responsible for our focus area competence, and I will give you some highlights from that area. So in the cluster, the ambitions of competence is to secure partners and members key access to the right competence. We are also want to it's important for us to increase the attractiveness of the seafood industry, and we are working closely together with industry, research and education for making the right education and competence programs. Within competence, we have 3 focus areas. So we are working with education, we are working with competence and talent attraction. And to achieve these goals, we are working very closely in the resource groups for competence, and where we put together academia and industry to secure that we are tailoring the right educations for the industry. And during the 5 years, we have made education at all levels, for bachelor, for master, for MBA students, and we are now working with a vocational technical college and continuing education. So for the education part, we are working to facilitate education, and for the competence area, we are establishing and running our own competence programs. It is also important to be attractive for the best candidates, and we work with different initiatives to make the industry known, ranging from secondary school until higher education. During the autumn 2020, we have the following activities to focus on. We are starting up a new and our 5th cohort for seafood trainee. The recruiting process is just finalized, and we have almost 30 candidates that will start in September when the new program is starting. 400 candidates applied to be a seafood trainee, so it's a popular program, and we know also that the trainees are very happy with joining the program, and also all the companies that has been taking part so far. Due to Corona, we had to postpone module 3 and 4 from the last cohort, but we are now offering the trainees from the last cohort a new module in August, and they will be compensated for the program they lost in the spring. And what we can see is that a lot of the trainees will take part of the program, and that means that they most probably has got an position in the company they have been a trainee in. As I talked about in the movie, the film, we are starting this autumn a new competence program in September. Seafood Next is an international program for professionals new to the seafood industry. We believe that this program will also be interesting for international candidates, and we will therefore have this program in English. The 1-year program is open for everyone that wants to further develop their insight and knowledge in the global seafood industry. And the program attracts candidates with all kinds of expertise and positions. The program will focus on sustainable growth through the whole value chain, and in addition, the participants will get deeper insight about the most important megatrends in the industry. And we see that the program is already very popular, and 25 out of the 30 spots has already been booked by different participants. And we believe that this is something that will be very interesting for the future. The industry has high demands for competence within RAS technology. And together with the projects CARBIS and Ocean Innovation Catapult, we have set an ambition to develop new and more updated educational programs for the industry within RAS. This is including continuing educations and vocational technical college within new production methods. And a new vocational technical college school within RAS has been planned to start spring next year. Within continuing education, 2 new courses will come this autumn. One at the university will give 5 credits, and 1 practical RAS course at the RAS lab. Within our last focus area, we are focusing on attracting talents, and attracting talents to the industry is important for the sustainable growth we need. In November, we will organize 2 innovation camps for pupils aged 14 to 15 years. And our ambition is to influence the choice of educational course at an early stage. At the innovation camps, the pupils will get to know the seafood industry through presentations and visit fish farms before they start working with innovative cases with mentors from the seafood sector. These pilots will be run in 2 secondary schools in Björgolfur and will be organized together with relevant members in the located in the area. If the pilots are a success, we have planned to run out the concept in several schools next year. Okay. Thank you.
Innovasjon er veldig viktig satsing for klyngen, fordi at industri vokser på, med og av innovasjon. Uten innovasjon så er vi på stedet hvil og kommer oss ikke videre. Klyngen vår er mangfolden selv. Vi har store og små oppdrettsselskaper. Vi har pittesmå startups. Vi har noen av verdens beste akademiske institusjoner innenfor vårt spesifikke fagfelt. Men også veldrevne og godt etablerte industriselskap i alle størrelser. Sånn sett får vi et fantastisk perspektiv og bredde i det vi gjør. Men det er stor forskjell på å jobbe med et stort internasjonalt selskap med kanskje 12 000 ansatte og så en tomannsbedrift som er nettopp stiftet.
AquaCloud er et samarbeidskonsept for de største aktørene i bransjen på samling av de store datamengdene som alle selskapene sitter på. Det er å samle de store datamengdene vi har, og sammenstille de og analysere de, så får vi faktabasert informasjon som vi kan agere på. Noe som næringen trengte på det tidspunktet vi startet opp, nettopp for vi stod overfor et stort problem rundt lus og det å ta tak i det som er biologisk utfordring.
Unikt for ressursgruppa for innovasjon vil si er dynamikken og åpenheten og utveksling av både kunnskap og spørsmål og det at vi sitter der, noen er konkurrenter, noen er mer kommer fra akademika, noen kommer fra næringen. Det at vi kan få denne utvekslingen og snakke åpent, veldig nyttig for å komme videre i de forskjellige prosessene vi er i.
Det å bygge ulike aktører inn i et økosystem med den type modell vi har med akademia, entreprenører, vi går mot risikokapital, i tillegg til de etablerte sjømatsprodusentene og offentlige aktører og virkemiddelapparatet, så er jo det dette økosystemet som sammen danner boosten i et innovasjonssystem da, som vi prøver å realisere i det vi holder på med.
Klyngen har vært en form for fasilitator for dette arbeidet hele veien, og jeg tror heller ikke det hadde kommet i gang hvis ikke det hadde vært for klyngen i denne konseptet her. Og det at vi har hatt klyngen som kan du si, en kontinuitetsbærer i arbeidet i AquaCloud, har også vært helt avgjørende for at vi har kommet dit vi er i dag.
Jeg tror akkurat denne her brobyggingen og tverrfagligheten, og det at vi møtes med så forskjellig både bakgrunn og ja, hva skal jeg si, utgangspunkt veldig viktig. Det vanskelig å treffes ellers. Alle opptatt med sitt og sine problemstillinger, og her løftes det litt mer opp og fram, og det et veldig viktig møtepunkt.
Det viktigste i årene som kommer, vi tenker veldig mye bærekraftig vekst. Hvordan den veksten skal det være i tonn eller kroner. Det viktigste er at vi kan få bærekraften på plass, og vår strategi da gjenspeiler dette her. Det er dyrevelferd, det er digitalisering som verktøy, og det er bedre fôrmidler med lavere CO2-profil. Dette er langsiktige prosjekter, og noe som vil være viktig for oss i veldig, veldig mange år fremover. Hi everybody, I'm really happy to reach out to you through this new medium. So as an innovation cluster, we obviously are more than happy to take new technologies into use. I want to walk you through our innovation area, our business area. Quickly to my start slide here. We have in innovation 3 main business areas, just as other business areas do have. We focus a lot on digitalization. We work with fish health and fish welfare and new marine resources. I'm going to walk you a little bit through the major points here, just to give you an insight into what we do. But as you can see, everything we do is aimed at actual industry needs, and some have a perspective fairly close in time, some are somewhat more forward-looking. So I'm not going to go in any more detail into this space here, but I'll try to show you what we are actually doing to live up to these points. I just want to point out the last one, carbon neutrality or carbon negative feed raw materials, are what we consider somewhat forward-looking, since this is looking into the future of growth and how we actually acquire what we need to grow properly. Highlights of this year and some of the projects we are working on. We are engaged in 2 EU projects with 36 committed partners. Our focus there and the focus of the projects are digital solutions, IoT, feed, genetics and knowledge transfer. Transferring knowledge from an advanced industry in Norway is actually very well received and very popular throughout Europe. So we have a unique position that we are working out from. We work with projects. We work with I would like to say AquaCloud is fulfilling its role as a generator for digital maturation in the industry. And this has been described quite thoroughly through Jørn's contribution here, but I want to point out that I still have a little finger in the project. I've been working with this project for 3 years now, and it's starting to come into its own as a project generator, which is actually contributing in its own right to the cluster. We use workshops as project generators. We have several projects that I would like to mention. One is a tiny project with a huge ambition, Mind the Gap. We are trying to close the gap between scientific findings and actually uptake into the industry. There is so much high quality findings being brought to the field almost on a daily basis that it's extremely challenging for the fish farmers to actually take this into use and to make actually industrial use of those findings. And we find it extremely important. One of our roles is actually to transfer ideas and concepts between companies in the industry, and knowledge is one of these, let's say, products that we bring to the field and try to implement with. Another project is called the technology readiness level. A little bit different project in terms of what we actually do, but we actually looked into what is the status of a new field of high-tech companies, the companies who use camera-based artificial intelligence as an eye into the cage. So they look at the fish, what's happening with sea lice, behavior, feeding, and so on and so forth. And we actually found that we followed them over 2 years, and we saw some recurring issues that we are actually working on solving, amongst other things by engaging deeper into the entrepreneurship and financial side of it. We are planning several similar workshops in the next 6 months, where we'll be joining with clusters within the agriculture, in fishing and others. And we'll be looking at how can we learn and bring technology, ideas and knowledge to the forefront of our industry, working very closely with these sectors. Because Norway is a tiny country, as Reve actually said earlier today, and we can actually work with that small size by cooperating. And I think that's one of our strengths, being a small country. That was my last slide, but I would like to I can just pop back so we don't have a black screen. I would like to underline the importance of groups. We have talked about the resource groups in the cluster, and I want to underline the importance of actually contributing and working in these groups. You guys, the companies in the cluster, you are our fuel, and this is a mutuality. We need to have your input, your ideas, and your engagement so that we can actually bring that to bear on the issues and industry challenges that you set us on the path to solve. So we talked about a cluster is like a family, and we need to contribute to each other. We are happy to do that, but we need to be fueled by your enthusiasm as well. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, and again, I'm really happy to engage with you here. So, next.
Shrimpvision et ektefødt barn av NCE Seafood Innovation Cluster. Vi har egentlig startet med en idé som kanskje ikke sånn veldig revolusjonerende, men gjennom studiet så har vi sett at norsk akvakultur har utviklet veldig mye positivt for å gjøre seg selv til verdensledende på oppdrett av laks. Den teknologien, den måten å tenke på, den måten å arbeide på, ønsker vi å ta over i rekeproduksjon.
Vi i klyngen vi jobber med entreprenørskap på ulike måter. Og det vi ønsker er å tilføre kapital, nettverk og kompetanse til det innovative økosystemet. Å lykkes som gründer handler veldig mye om å forstå de utfordringene som næringen står i. Og så handler det om å kjenne til virkemiddelapparatet og kjenne til alle de gode hjelperne der ute.
Når Tarlek fikk ideen om at vi ønsket å begynne med et prosjekt her nede på Marienholmen, så er det jo et eller annet helt unikt med at man får med seg universitetet, man får med seg Veterinærinstituttet, man får positiv backing fra klyngen som gjør at du faktisk kan gå fra lesesal til laboratoriefasiliteten der vi har rekene våre og til kontoret, uten å måtte slå opp paraplyen en gang i Bergen.
Det er satt veldig ambisiøse vekstmål for sjømatnæringen. Blant annet så har man sagt at frem mot 2050 så ønsker man at produksjonen skal femdobles. Det er veldig ambisiøst. For at vi skal klare å komme dit, så er vi avhengig av gründerne, og at de finner innovative løsninger på de utfordringene som bransjen opplever.
Det som er oppfinnelsen bak SeaSmart er det som vi kaller en drone. Det er en trådløs sak som vi legger i merdene og som måler miljøet inni merdene. Og det gjør det mulig å samle et bedre datasett enn det man ellers har hatt tilgjengelig.
Vi ønsker å øke kapitaltilgangen for gründerne i sjømatsektoren. Og så jobber vi med gründerne for å gjøre de investorklare, men vi jobber også med investorsiden for at de skal ha komfort på næringen, og for at de skal ha god forståelse for utvikling og trender.
Kapitalprogrammet for oss har vært viktig for å forstå hvordan investoren tenker, og forstå hvordan ulike investorer skal inn i ulike faser i selskapet, og forstå hva ulike investorer ser på, hvordan dette ser ut fra deres perspektiv. I forhold til innovasjon og teknologi, så ser vi jo det at den teknologien som jobbes fram, den jobbes fram for en næring og ikke for ett selskap som skal bli bedre enn et annet. Og det gjør kanskje også klyngesamarbeidet enda viktigere.
I klyngesamarbeidet så er det jo en rekke aktører som selv velger hva prosjekter de ønsker å ta del i, men vi presenterer og fasiliterer litt initiativet og koordineringen i et prosjektsamarbeid. Noe har vi prosjektledelse for, men det er jo klyngen som selv og dets egne medlemmer som selv velger hvor deres strategi og deres ambisjoner for selskapet passer inn i de prosjektsamarbeidene som inngås. Men samtidig så ønsker vi også å dele kunnskapen som skjer i de ulike selskapene, sånn at hele dette kunnskapsgrunnlaget vokser og gir på en måte et felles grunnlag for hvordan vi kan utvikle næringen på sikt, da, i tillegg til de konkrete prosjektene vi har i klyngesamarbeid.
Yeah, then it's our third business area, entrepreneurship. And what we do in entrepreneurship, I think Sjur here in the film, he describes it very well. The cluster's work with entrepreneurs, it's all about contributing to making it possible to take an idea from your desk or from the study hall to the testing room, piloting, and all the way to the market. And we are not trying to make the journey easy or completely friction-free, but we want to contribute, and you should, because we want to contribute to actually take your ideas and making it possible to succeed. And we want to become this partner in accelerating the innovative growth within seafood. And that's all because our startups and entrepreneurs are important, and it's really important for the growth. And Torger Reve said it previously as well. He stated that 2/3 of new jobs are actually created by young firms. So our ambitions within my area is stated in 4 points here. Our ambition is to have a high level of entrepreneurial competence. That means that amongst our startups and our entrepreneurs, we want to equip them with the knowledge they need. We want to make sure they possess and develop core skills within business development, investor strategies, and capital raising, and so on and so forth. Secondly, we want to make sure that we have this active, innovative ecosystem. That means that we need to identify the players. We need to connect them, and we need to make sure that each one of them are aware of their valuable contribution within this growth perspective. And part of this work is our third point. It's really important that we have access to risk capital. That was also mentioned earlier today. We need to secure that capital is attracted to this sector, and we need to connect with the investors. And we need to know what investors are actually willing to put money on the table and take risk. And that means that the investors need comfort on our sector. And we want the investors, as Torger Reve said previously, we want the investors who are actually willing to build scale-ups. Lastly, we need an engaged industry partner. We need the established industry players to be active in this as well. We need their support to support the startups and support the entrepreneurs. They have valuable knowledge and valuable access to market, and we need that knowledge to be shared. In this role, I think the cluster has an important role as an advisor, as a discussion partner, and as a matchmaker and facilitator in all those cases. And we want to be that. In brief, what this slide shows is that all we do and all the cluster contributes with relates to either competence, capital, or network. And I know you might not be able to read this, but all our efforts are actually put into projects relating to these three areas. And we want to make sure that we add value to our partners and our members in all these perspectives. And today I want to give you a short introduction to two of the projects that are the most important for this year. Firstly, it's a portal called SeaPoint. It's a digital meeting place, and it's to be launched before the summer holidays. And secondly, I tell you about a competence program that we made, which is named Are You Ready to Raise Capital? But firstly, the SeaPoint portal. It's developed by the cluster, and it's developed based on the needs that we have heard from our members. And in this world, we need to become digital. We said that digital transformation is important for the cluster and for the sector, and it's also important for our services, so we need to become digital as well. So SeaPoint is this digital meeting point where we make a lot of useful information available, and we connect the players in our ecosystem. We have 3 perspectives logging into SeaPoints. This is the first view, the first page. And once you log in either as a startup, as an investor, or as a company. And if you log in as a startup, this is the overview page. And as you can see here, we've made a lot of useful information available for you. We've gathered a lot of information around public funding. We share with you the industry challenges and the industry insights with a lot of reports that we've gathered. We also make available the startup helpers and the startup documents that are critical for you to begin your business. And then we also link you directly to our events. And most important for our startups might be the investors. In this portal, our investors can make qualified searches for investors that will match their needs. If you log in as an investor, it's important that you, in addition to this, will also see our startups. You will see a full profile of all the startups within our cluster. And you can also have, in that way, you can have a direct link into a really interesting deal flow in our sector. So that was just a little taste. Our competence program, Are You Ready to Raise Capital, was piloted in 2019, and we're excited to launch a full-scale program this fall. It's all about attracting capital is efforts on the investor side, but it's also about becoming investable entrepreneurs. And our entrepreneurs tell us that they would like competence within this area. So the program is focusing on the capital raising process, and we look at the company from an investor's point. And we work together to identify investors that are good for their company and to match the company needs and to be able to support with competent capital and taking their company forward. So that was just a little taste of what we do in the entrepreneurial area, and I look forward to tell you more in the next year.
I hope you had some interesting insight to what we're doing in the Seafood Innovation Cluster. We will encourage you to get in touch if you would like to hear more about what we are doing or to interact with us in another form. Thank you for this session and have a good summer.